Plural Noun Proposition papers. Today's sample is World Religions, and that is one of the courses that we offer, and we believe is absolutely essential for you to understand because the religion of Christianity is not the only religion that you're going to hear about. Now, it is the only true religion, but you're going to hear about a lot of false gods, about a lot of false religions, and the question becomes, well, how do you know what is true? I would encourage you to begin with this. Opposing views cannot both be right. So, world religions that have opposing views, opposing ideologies, opposing gods, opposing ways to get to God, well, by definition, they're exclusive. By definition, they can't all be true. And so we want to be able to clearly evaluate and look at world religions and be able to process them so that we know what's wrong about them, so that we know how to defend our position against false religions. And so we're going to ask you and our students to go through a series of studying other religions, not into great detail, but enough to understand what their position is, what their point of view is, and why their position and point of view can't be right. So we're doing that through our plural noun proposition papers, the outlines that we always encourage you and make you do as assignments. Begin with our 5-step process. You got to determine the proposition, then you're going to compare or compose an outline for your paper. You're going to prepare the body of your paper with supporting facts and evidences, and then you're going to go back and rewrite that introduction, make it a good, crisp, clean introduction, and then finally formulate a conclusion to that paper. So again, when we are talking about world religions, we're going to begin with either watching a video or reading an article. You're going to begin by taking notes. You're going to have to take good notes. You're going to have your Cornell note-taking process. You already know where you're going, right? You already know that you have some questions, some key questions. And so in our brainstorming, we may need to define or explain key theological points or doctrinal points. Maybe we want to know who the founders are, what year. I mean, could a true religion, a true God be invented last year? I mean, what about the rest of human history? And so we'll get to some of that. But in our brainstorming, and today we're going to just kind of look at as an overview postmodernism, right? So postmodernism, is it a religion or is it a philosophy? I would argue that it is a religion. It's a false world religion. And it is a philosophy. Well, all religions are philosophies. All religions are ideologies. And so when you are living by the faith of something that's philosophical, ideological, I would call that a religion. So I pulled out postmodernism. And so in my brainstorming, just some of the key things, taking down notes, they're skeptics. That means there's no gods. They don't like meta-narratives. They don't like the idea of like a big picture, right? They're subjective and everything's relative. So stealing's subjective, stealing isn't always wrong. They have suspicion of reason. So they don't have to make sense in their arguments. They don't believe in absolutes. There are no moral absolutes. There are no absolutes at all. So they're very existential in that sense, right? So the idea that, you can stand in the middle of the street and a truck hits you. Well, not necessarily. They're going to argue that point, although I don't see them doing it. They marry their ideas. They kind of marry the idea of nihilism, which is there is no meaning, right? There's no meaning in life because there's no God. But then they also unite it with this utopianism, which is why I call it, that is their religion. There's no God, but our belief system is a utopian system. Well, there's no real meaning, but we all believe in this together. So that's kind of some brainstorming elements that you might put down with, one of these false world religions. Just kind of the key points, the key things that you're going to have to address, define, argue, and explain, right? So the goal then is to understand the core elements of these ideas, these false religions. That's why we want to make sure that we're defining or explaining kind of their key theological or doctrinal points, their key beliefs. I mentioned the key founders, knowing that somebody kind of started this religion, Muhammad, Joseph Smith, right? Well, understanding who those people are may disqualify the religion from the beginning just because of those people, right? How do they describe Jesus? It's interesting that almost all false religions today have to have an account of Jesus. Jesus lived on this earth. There's no denying. There's no mystery. Jesus Christ lived on this planet. He lived on this earth. That's a fact. Now, whether he was a liar, a lunatic, or the Lord Jesus Christ, well, that's up for debate, right? And so, how do they describe Jesus? Is he a God? Is he a prophet? Is he just a man? Well, the Bible has something to say about that. What does their holy book say? What is their perspective? What's their position on salvation? How do we get saved from this? How do we escape? What happens when we die, right? What happens when we die? And then just a list of kind of their key beliefs. I mentioned to you with postmodernism. They're very subjective, moral relativism. What their perspective is, look, there are no absolutes, right? Because there's no absolutes. Now, you'll understand this. Because there's no absolute, then there's no absolute truth. So there are no facts in their minds. So then facts can be twisted, manipulated, lied about. Because there are no absolute facts. There is no absolute truth. You'll see them saying this, and I just saw on CNN, one of the most famous newscasters, an anchor of news, was crowing about my truth. He kept saying, well, this is my truth. There's no my truth. There's only the truth. My truth is a great postmodern statement. You'll see postmodern statements like this. I just want to do what makes me happy, right? That's a very postmodern. Who cares about anybody else in the world, how it affects anybody else, as long as it makes me happy? Because there is no moral right or wrong. There's no absolute moral law being. That means everything's okay. Hey, we can try everything once, right? Could try anything once. Really? There's no sin. There's no restrictions. There's nothing that's prohibited. No, I can try anything once, as long as it makes me happy. So we see kids saying this all the time. As long as it entertains me, then that's what I want to do. So you take all this information and what do I do with it? What do I do with all the different type of information? Let's take Mormons, for instance. So Mormons, there's a lot of there's polygamy, there's their view on blacks, there's the violence that they had in Missouri, there's their founder, finding their law in a hat. I mean, they have more than one holy book. Where do we begin? Where do we start with these guys, right? Come up with three. Come up with the three most important key points, and then that's what you're going to discuss in your paper. Do that with all the different religions you look at. Do that with postmodernism. So in postmodernism, it's like, well, okay, what key points then are we going to address? What are that's how I'm going to come up with my proposition statement, right? So what I did was, as I was looking at my notes and writing down different things, what jumped out at me right away was, oh, there's all these S's all over the place. I'm going to get to use my alliteration. And so remember, alliteration is when you begin it's the same letter beginning of the sentence or the word. And so for my plural noun proposition for postmodernism, I was able to use S's. So the first element of postmodernism is skepticism. The second element of postmodernism is subjectivism. And the third element of postmodernism is suspicion or suspicious. So That makes it real easy too, by the way, for the future. If you're like, what did the postmodernists believe? Oh, there's three S's: skeptics, suspicion. I know that, and then the third one, I know it's an S. Subjective. See how the alliteration will help you to remember, because there's a lot of things to remember in this world, right? So by developing a good plural noun proposition statement of postmodernism, you know what the three key elements are, beginning with S: skepticism, subjective, and suspicious. So now all you have to do is kind of take that next step. Okay, well, what do you mean by skepticism? Define it. That means they don't believe in God. They're skeptical about God. They're skeptical about all kinds of truths and realities. The second element then is the subjectivism, right? There is no moral absolutes, therefore there is no moral right or wrong, therefore there's only my truth. It doesn't matter what the truth is. And then the third element of postmodernism, what do you mean by suspicious, right? Well, they're suspicious of kind of like rational reasoning, right? Facts don't matter. They're just very suspicious about everything. They look up at the sun that's shining on their face and, well, how do I know that's the sun? How, you know, and they start challenging and questioning everything that they see. Getting into a discussion or argument with them can be very, very frustrating because nothing sticks, right? Nothing sticks. Everything just turns, well, that's what I believe. That's my opinion. That's my point of view. You have your point of view. I have my point of view. Well, there are things that come down to where we're here judging the law, not your perspective. This is why we see in America today so many people challenging the law. If they don't like it, well, one, don't obey it, and two, well, change it. But go back to, well, I don't have to obey it. So they just don't obey the law. They don't like the law, they don't obey the law. That comes out of really a very cynical postmodern view perspective. Again, we're composing our outline. So our first key point is postmodernists are skeptics, right? What does that mean? Support that. The second part to that is they're subjective, right? They believe, everything's subjective. What does that mean? Describe it, explain it, support it. And then finally, the suspicious. They're very suspicious of relativity, reason. So that's how you would then compose and support this religion of postmodernism and any of our other future topics as well. So plural noun proposition papers in writing about our world religions are a great tool for future resources, future understanding. These things will come up. The false religions, false ideas always resurface in different ways. You'll notice that postmodernism is part of a previous movement called modernism. They change, they morph, they rename themselves. And so as long as you understand like the key three pillars, the skepticism, the subjectivity, the suspicion, I can see that in this religion too. It'll help you in order to identify future false world religions. So that's how plural noun proposition papers will help you in formulating and understanding other world religions.